The sun had barely risen over the dusty town of Elridge when Maria Lopez parked her small pickup outside a yard filled with old machinery and abandoned metal containers. The place smelled of rust and oil, the kind of scent that most people hated but Maria found oddly comforting. She had come for one thing, an old rusted shipping container she had spotted in a local auction notice. She stood quietly as the men around her whispered and chuckled. "You sure you want that junk, Maria?" one of them asked, shaking his head. "You can't even open those doors without breaking a nail." The others laughed, but Maria didn't reply. She had learned long ago that silence was her best answer. She signed the paper, handed over the small envelope of cash she'd saved, and claimed the container as hers. To the men, it was just a pile of metal, corroded and worthless. To Maria, it was potential. She didn't see rust. She saw a blank canvas. Her pickup groaned under the weight as she towed the container back through the narrow streets. Curious faces peered from porches and store windows. Some waved. Others just smirked. "There goes Maria, the mechanic who thinks she's an inventor," someone muttered. She didn't look back. She had a plan, one she'd been dreaming about for years. Maria worked as a mechanic at a small repair shop near the edge of town. She was one of the best, they all knew it. But being the only woman in a crew of 6 men came with daily challenges. Customers often looked past her asking for a real mechanic. Some even refused to let her touch their cars. She had to fight twice as hard for half the credit, and though she smiled through it, it burned inside her. After her shift ended each day, she'd walk home to her modest house at the edge of town. Her backyard was small, fenced by old boards and overgrown weeds, but it was enough space for her to work. That's where the container now stood. A massive rusted box sitting crookedly on the dry earth. When she first stepped inside, dust swirled in the air, catching the last light of the setting sun. The metal walls were dented and flaked, and the floor creaked beneath her boots. But Maria smiled. "We'll fix you up," she whispered softly, like she was talking to an old friend. She always spoke to the machines she worked on. It helped her think. That night, while others slept, the sound of grinding metal echoed across her neighborhood. Sparks flew as she cut away corroded panels and welded new ones into place. Neighbors peeked through curtains, shaking their heads. "She's crazy," someone said. Working all night on garbage. But to Maria, it wasn't garbage. It was freedom. She had grown up in poverty, the daughter of a truck driver and a school janitor. Her father had taught her the basics of mechanics when she was barely 12. They would sit under the truck and he'd let her hand him tools, explaining every part as he worked. When he passed away in a road accident, Maria promised herself that one day she would do something that made him proud. Every spark, every weld, every drop of sweat brought her closer to that promise. Weeks passed. After finishing her long days at the shop, she returned home and worked deep into the night. She cut away the worst rust, replaced the flooring, and reinforced the frame. She cleaned out the walls, brushed on anti-rust primer, and painted over it with silver-gray paint that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. It wasn't perfect, but it was solid. When her mother came by one evening and saw the mess, she gasped. "Maria, you need rest. You can't keep doing this alone." Maria smiled softly. "I can, Mama, I just need time." Her mother sighed. She had seen that look before. Pure determination. The same look Maria's father had when he rebuilt an engine from scrap just to prove it could run again. "At least eat something," she said, leaving a small bag of tamales by the door before walking home. Maria barely stopped to eat. She measured every inch of the container, planning where to install workbenches and tool racks. On weekends, she visited junkyards collecting discarded motors, fans, and lights. She rebuilt them, fixed them, and brought them back to life. Every part had a story. Something broken, now reborn. Her coworkers at the repair shop teased her constantly. "You building yourself a home in that box, Lopez?" joked Rico, the senior mechanic. "Maybe she's starting a scrapyard," another added. Laughter followed her every day, but she never replied. She just tightened her gloves and kept working. A few months later, the container began to transform. The walls were lined with shelves. The ceiling now held working lights powered by a small battery system. She even managed to install a solar panel she had bought secondhand from a farmer who upgraded his setup. She wired it herself, reading manuals late into the night until she understood how everything connected. Every time the lights flickered on inside that container, she felt hope grow brighter inside her. One rainy evening, her boss called her into the office. "Maria, I heard you're spending your nights cutting up old metal," he said with a grin. "You sure you're not losing it? Maybe you should rest before you burn out." Maria wiped the oil from her hands and looked him straight in the eye. "I'm not burning out. I'm building something," he chuckled. "Well, whatever it is, I hope it runs better than your old truck." That night, Maria worked even harder. The rain poured outside, tapping the container roof like applause. She didn't stop. She installed a fold-out table she'd made from scrap wood, a small air compressor she'd repaired, and even a portable fuel tank. Slowly, her idea was coming to life. A mobile mechanic workshop. Something she could take anywhere, help anyone, especially those who couldn't afford big garages or lived too far to reach one. By the third month, her savings were nearly gone. She sold her TV, her old guitar, and even a few of her father's tools, though it hurt deeply. Every coin went into the project. But then something unexpected happened. One morning, as she was welding a corner joint, her neighbor, an old retired welder named Mr. Jenkins, walked over. He had been watching her for weeks from across the fence. "You need better rods," he said, handing her a small box. "And maybe someone who remembers what it's like to chase a dream." Maria blinked, surprised. "You'd help me?" he smiled. "I'm too old to climb trucks now, but I still know how to weld." "Move over." From that day, Mr. Jenkins became her silent partner. He brought his experience. She brought her energy. Together, they worked side by side. He taught her better welding angles, and she showed him how to connect solar systems. They shared stories, laughter, and coffee late into the night. Slowly, word began to spread. The same neighbors who mocked her started dropping by, curious to see the progress. When the container's interior was finally finished, Maria stepped back and stared at it, her chest tight with pride. The once rotten floor was now solid steel. The walls gleamed under LED strips powered by the sun. Every drawer had its place, every tool its holder. It wasn't fancy, but it was perfect. It felt like stepping inside a dream she had built with her own two hands. Still, the laughter hadn't stopped completely. One morning, when she brought her lunch to the repair shop, Rico asked, "So Lopez, when do we get to see your spaceship?" The men chuckled. Maria smiled faintly. "Soon," she said and walked away. She didn't owe them an explanation. Late that night, Maria climbed onto the container's roof and sat under the stars. Her hands were rough, her back sore, but her heart was light. She thought about her father again. "I did it, Papa," she whispered. "I really did it." The next few weeks were spent on details, painting, labeling, testing the equipment. She added foldable ramps so cars could roll up easily. She designed her own logo using a stencil. Lopez Mechanics, on the move. When she finished painting the name, she stood there for a long while, tears filling her eyes. It wasn't just paint, it was proof that she had turned every insult, every doubt, every late night into something real. But before the big reveal, disaster struck. A storm hit Elridge, bringing heavy rain and strong winds. Maria stayed awake all night, praying the container would hold. When the sun rose, she rushed outside. Half the paint was washed away, and one of the solar panels had come loose, shattered on the ground. Her heart sank. Weeks of work damaged overnight. She sat in the mud, rain still dripping from the edges of the roof. For the first time in months, she felt the weight of defeat. Maybe they were right, she thought. Maybe I was foolish to think I could build something big. Then she heard a voice behind her. "You gave up already?" It was Mr. Jenkins holding a new panel. "Found this at my cousin's farm. Not as good as yours, but it'll do." Maria blinked back tears. "You really think I should keep going?" He nodded. "You came this far? Don't stop now." She smiled through the exhaustion and stood up. Together they worked through the day. They repainted the damaged parts, replaced the panel, and fixed every leak. That night, when the lights came back on inside the container, Maria felt an overwhelming joy. The light flickered once, then steadied, strong and steady, just like her. By the time spring arrived, her project was complete. The rusty old container had become a shining, functional mobile workshop, ready to serve anyone in need. She installed new tires under a custom-built trailer so she could move it around with her pickup. It wasn't just a box anymore, it was freedom on wheels. When she drove it for the first time, the whole neighborhood gathered. Some still laughed, some clapped, others just stared. The container gleamed under the sunlight, freshly painted blue with silver accents. Maria sat behind the wheel of her truck, heart pounding. The morning air was cool and clear when Maria parked her truck and trailer in the middle of the town square. The blue container, freshly polished, reflected the sunlight like a jewel. It had taken her almost a year to reach this moment, and now as she stood beside her creation, her hands trembled, not from fear but from pride. A few people had already gathered, curious to see what she was doing. Children pointed and whispered. The same men who had laughed at her months ago leaned against a fence nearby, smirking as if expecting another failure. Maria took a deep breath, brushed the dust from her overalls, and walked to the back of the trailer. With one smooth motion, she unlocked the doors. The hinges creaked softly before swinging open to reveal a bright, clean interior. Sunlight spilled across the shining metal surfaces, the tool racks and the polished floor. Every tool had its place. The air smelled faintly of oil and fresh paint. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then one of the men muttered, "Well, I'll be—" Maria smiled quietly and switched on the lights inside. The LED strips flickered, then glowed steady white. A soft hum came from the solar inverter she'd built herself. The crowd began moving closer, peeking inside. There were gas tanks, power outlets, air compressors, and a fold-out table with a small computer screen showing digital readings from a car battery tester. "This is my mobile workshop," Maria said, her voice calm but strong. "It runs on solar power. I can travel anywhere to repair vehicles. No need for a big shop, no need for expensive rent." The older man who ran the hardware store stepped forward. "You built this yourself?" Maria nodded. "Every weld, every wire." A woman in the crowd clapped softly, then louder. One by one, others joined in until the sound filled the square. Maria's throat tightened. For months she had dreamed of this moment, the silence of disbelief turning into applause. Her boss from the old repair shop walked over, scratching his head. "You really did it, Lopez," he said. "I didn't think you'd pull it off." She smiled gently. "I know you didn't," he laughed awkwardly. "You ever think about coming back? I could use someone like you running things." Maria looked around at her workshop, then back at him. "Thank you, but I already have my own shop now." The crowd laughed, not mockingly this time, but with genuine warmth. For the first time in her life, Maria wasn't just a worker. She was a creator. People began lining up with questions. A farmer asked if she could fix his tractor. A delivery driver wanted to know if she could service his van without him taking it to the city. Maria nodded to each one. "Yes," she said, "that's exactly why I built this." By noon, she was already working. The farmer's old pickup was first. She lifted the hood, checked the battery, and connected her small diagnostic screen. Within minutes, she identified the issue: a bad alternator wire. Her hands moved confidently, her tools clinking softly in the sunlight. The crowd watched as she repaired it on the spot. When the engine roared to life, the farmer clapped her shoulder. "You've saved me a whole week, Miss Lopez." Maria wiped the sweat from her brow. "Glad to help." By evening, her story had spread. Someone had taken a video and posted it online. It showed her standing beside the blue container, sparks flying as she welded, then the crowd cheering as she opened the doors. Within hours, it began circulating across social media. Comments poured in. People from other towns asking for her help, praising her creativity, sharing their own dreams. The next morning, a local reporter arrived. He was a tall young man with a notebook and camera. "Miss Lopez," he said politely, "we'd love to do a story on you. The people want to know how a single mechanic turned a rusty container into a full workshop." Maria hesitated. She wasn't used to attention. "I didn't do it for fame," she said softly. "I know," the reporter replied, smiling. "That's why your story matters." He followed her through the day as she worked, asking gentle questions: how she learned mechanics, why she chose this path, what kept her going when everyone laughed. Maria answered honestly, speaking about her father, her long nights, and her belief that hard work could turn anything into something beautiful. That evening, her story aired on local television. The headline read, "From Rust to Respect, the mechanic who built her dream." Her phone rang nonstop afterward. People wanted interviews, schools wanted her to speak, and even an automotive company offered her tools for free. Maria was overwhelmed but grateful. She didn't want fame. She wanted purpose, and now she finally had it. Days turned into weeks, and her business began to grow. Farmers called her to fix machinery in remote fields. Delivery drivers requested her mobile service instead of traveling long distances to garages. Soon, Maria had to hire help. She thought carefully about who to choose. Finally, she hired 2 young women from town who had been struggling to find work. She trained them patiently, teaching them not just how to fix engines, but how to believe in themselves. "Don't let anyone tell you can't do it," she told them. They told me the same thing once. They listened, eyes bright with hope. Together, the 3 women traveled across the region, fixing cars, tractors, and even school buses. Wherever they went, people stared, not because they were women, but because they were efficient, professional, and kind. Maria had changed the story. One afternoon, Maria received an unexpected letter. It was from the local technical college. They wanted her to speak to their graduating students. The dean wrote, "You represent what hard work and innovation can achieve. Our students could learn much from you." Maria hesitated at first. She wasn't a speaker, but she agreed. On the day of the event, she parked her blue mobile workshop right outside the campus. The students gathered around, excited to see the famous container mechanic. When she walked onto the small stage, her palms were sweaty, but her smile was steady. "I was once told I wasn't strong enough for this job," she began. "They said women shouldn't fix cars. But strength isn't about lifting heavy things, it's about not giving up. Every night I spent welding that old box taught me one thing: no one will believe in your dream until you make it real." The students listened silently. Some nodded, some wiped away tears. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. The dean shook her hand and said, "You've done more for this community than you realize." That night, as Maria drove home, she thought about how far she had come. The same town that once mocked her now cheered for her. The same people who doubted her now trusted her with their vehicles. She had turned laughter into respect. A few months later, Maria received another surprise, a visit from a major automotive magazine. They wanted to feature her as one of their Innovators of the Year. The photographer took pictures of her standing proudly beside the mobile workshop, her gloves in one hand, a gentle smile on her face. The article's title read, "She Built Hope Out of Rust." When the issue was published, Maria's story spread beyond her town. Donations arrived from people who wanted to support her cause. With that money, she built 2 more mobile workshops, one for her new apprentices and another she donated to a local vocational school so students could learn hands-on repair work. Mr. Jenkins, her old neighbor and helper, came to see her one evening. His health had weakened, but his eyes were full of pride. "You did good, kid," he said, patting her shoulder. "You made something from nothing." Maria smiled warmly. "Couldn't have done it without you," he chuckled. "You'd have managed anyway. You've got fire in you." They sat together under the stars, the blue container glowing softly behind them. Maria looked at the lights and whispered, "It all started with a rusted box." Jenkins nodded. "That's how most miracles start, rusted, broken, and full of potential." Over time, Maria's workshop became a familiar sight across the region. She fixed engines on mountain roads, repaired broken buses outside schools, and even helped stranded travelers. People began calling her the Mechanic Angel. She didn't like titles, but she appreciated the kindness behind it. One summer afternoon, as she was repairing an old van by the roadside, a car pulled up beside her. Out stepped her former boss, the man who once told her she might burn out. He smiled awkwardly and said, "You proved me wrong, Lopez. I'm proud of you." Maria looked up, wiping her hands on her overalls. "Thank you," she said simply. "You were part of the story, too." He laughed softly. "Well, if you ever want a bigger shop, I've got space. We could partner." Maria smiled, shaking her head. "I already have a bigger shop. It's on wheels." He chuckled, nodding in admiration. "Fair enough." As the years passed, Maria's idea inspired others. Soon there were dozens of mobile workshops across nearby towns, some run by women, some by men. All started because one person dared to build something from rust. She trained young people, taught them mechanical skills, and showed them how to start small businesses of their own. One day, a teenage girl approached her after a workshop and said shyly, "Miss Maria, I want to be like you when I grow up." Maria knelt down, smiling gently. "Then start now. Don't wait for someone's permission. Just start." That night, as Maria closed the doors of her workshop, she took one last look around. The shelves were full, the lights glowed softly, and her heart felt at peace. The laughter that once haunted her had turned into applause, and the rust that once covered her dream had turned into something bright and strong. She stood outside, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and gold. The same horizon that once looked impossible now seemed endless.